Have you ever felt rage rise in your body over something so small and then immediately you judged yourself? Have you ever hidden in the bathroom just to get 60 seconds of silence? Have you ever thought, why am I so reactive lately? I didn't used to be like this. But what if I tell you you're not failing? What if you're not impatient? What if you're not losing yourself? What if you're just overstimulated? Hey y'all, I'm Sadie, a mama, dancer, Navy wife, and a woman on a mission to rediscover who she is after motherhood, after burnout, after seasons that stretch you so far you can barely recognize yourself anymore. And this is Becoming Her Again. Today, we're talking about something that I think more moms struggle with than we like to admit. That is overstimulation. Not just being tired, not just being busy, but that tight-chested, edgy, buzzing nervous system feeling that makes you snap faster than you want to. And once I understood what was actually happening in my body, everything shifted. There is a specific kind of tired that only moms understand, and it isn't just physical. It's the tired that comes from being touched all day, needed all day, spoken to all day, climbed on all day, uninterrupted all day. It's the tired that isn't fixed by sleep because it lives in your nervous system. And if you've ever found yourself snapping over something so small, feeling rage rise faster than you expected, or wanting 5 minutes of silence so badly you could cry, I want you to hear this first. You are not broken. You're overstimulated. And I didn't even have language for this at first. I just thought I was failing at patience. I thought I should be calmer. I thought if I loved this season enough, I wouldn't feel so overwhelmed by the noise and repetition and constant requests. But the truth is, motherhood is a huge sensory job. You are processing sound, touch, movement, decision-making, and emotional regulation simultaneously. And most of us are doing it without structured breaks. I remember one afternoon recently where my son was playing, toys were just scattered everywhere like usual, and the TV wasn't even on, yet my chest felt so tight, my shoulders were tense, and every small sound felt so amplified. And when he came and asked me the same question for the 50th time, I felt irritation spike faster than I wanted to admit. And in that moment, I had a choice. I could shame myself for being impatient, or I could get curious about what was actually happening. What was happening wasn't moral failure. It was a nervous system overload. Your nervous system is designed to handle stress in waves. Stress rises, you recover, and it lowers. But motherhood often doesn't allow that full recovery cycle, okay? There are no predictable off switches. So your baseline creeps upwards, you become slightly activated all day, and when you're slightly activated for hours, small things feel big. This was a huge shift for me because instead of asking, why am I so reactive, I started asking, where am I overstimulated? And those are very different questions. One attacks your identity, but the other evaluates your environment. And overstimulation isn't weakness, it's biology. Your brain is constantly scanning for cues, noise, mess, unpredictability, crying, repetitive questions. All of that is input. And input without pause becomes overload. Add in sleep deprivation, decision fatigue, and the invisible mental load of motherhood, and it makes sense why so many moms feel like they're constantly on the edge. For me, the first step wasn't changing my son's behavior, it was acknowledging my capacity. There are days where my capacity is high. There are days where it is not. And pretending my capacity is unlimited is what creates resentment. But the turning point came when I stopped trying to prove that I could handle everything without breaks. Okay? That old version of me prided herself on endurance, on pushing through, on managing high volume. But motherhood taught me that endurance without recovery is not strength. It's depletion, okay? And once I stopped judging the overstimulation, I could actually start managing it. Overstimulation doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like snapping over spilled milk. Sometimes it looks like crying in the car after a very long shopping trip. Sometimes it looks like resenting your phone lighting up with one more notification. Sometimes it looks like feeling touched out by 2 p.m. and not wanting anyone else on your body. For me, it often showed up as impatience in moments that shouldn't have felt big. Cole would ask the same question over and over and over again because that's what toddlers do. And I could feel this irritation spike in my chest before my brain even caught up. Or he would cling to my leg while I was trying to work, and instead of feeling warm and needed, I would feel trapped and tight. And then immediately after that feeling, the shame would hit. Why are you reacting like that? Other moms handle this better. You should be more patient. That second wave was almost worse than the first one because now I wasn't just overstimulated, I was overstimulated and attacking myself. The shift happened when I stopped treating the reaction as a character flaw and started treating it as data. It told me something was off, not about my character, but about my capacity. And there are 3 main reasons moms get overstimulated more than we realize. And the first is sensory overload. Toddlers are loud, okay? They move constantly, they ask repetitive questions, they need physical touch so often. Your brain is processing sound, movement, and emotional cues all day long. That is high cognitive load. And the second is decision fatigue, snacks, meals, outfits, schedules, appointments, bedtimes, play ideas, safety, discipline. You're making hundreds of micro decisions daily, and the decision making uses energy without you noticing. But then the third is lack of full nervous system recovery. Even when you rest, you're still listening, you're still monitoring, you're still anticipating. When I understood those 3 layers, I stopped expecting myself to operate like I had unlimited bandwidth. So here's what I started doing. First, I reduced sensory input intentionally. Not dramatically, not the Pinterest perfect way, but practically. I lowered the volume. I had fewer background shows on. I only had 1 toy bin out at a time instead of all 5. And then I had soft lighting in the evening instead of overhead brightness. I had 5 minutes outside alone while he plays safely nearby. You would be surprised how much reducing visual and auditory input lowers your baseline tension. But second, I built micro breaks within my day. Not spa days, not elaborate resets, just micro breaks. 2 minutes in the bathroom with the door locked, okay? 3 deep breaths before responding to a meltdown. Stepping outside barefoot for just 1 minute. These are not dramatic solutions. They are regulation anchors, and they matter. Then the third thing, I started naming my state out loud, okay? Instead of snapping and spiraling, I began saying, "Mommy feels overstimulated right now. I need a minute." Okay, that did 2 things. It modeled emotional awareness and it removed shame from the experience. Overstimulation is not moral failure. It's information. And when you treat it as information, you can respond instead of react. Now, here's where identity comes in. When you ignore overstimulation long-term, you slowly start losing access to your softer self. You become sharper, shorter, less patient, more defensive. Not because you're bad, but because you're overloaded. And I noticed that when I didn't address my nervous system, I started feeling like I wasn't myself. But when I prioritized regulation, even in just a small way, I felt more grounded, more connected, and more steady. And that's what we're actually after, right? Not perfection, but steadiness. And there's another moment recently that stands out. It was dinner time. Koa was refusing to eat. I was tired. The kitchen was a mess. And I felt that similar tightening in my chest. The old pattern would have been raise the voice, feel bad, spiral internally. I felt the tone rise in my voice. I saw his face change. And for a second, I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to say, well, you weren't listening. But I knew that wasn't really it. I was overloaded. So I turned around, took a breath, and came back softer. It wasn't dramatic and it wasn't Instagram worthy, but it was different. And difference compounds over time. The more you interrupt the cycle, the more you rewire it. Overstimulation doesn't just disappear, but your response to it changes. And that changes everything. Now, there is a deeper level to overstimulation that we don't talk about enough. It's not just the noise, it's not just the touch, it's not just the repetition. It's the fact that as moms, we are constantly on. Even when we're sitting still, even when we're resting, even when we're scrolling on our phone, there is this low-level awareness running in the background at all times. Is he safe? Is he quiet? Is he too quiet? Did I pack snacks? What time is bedtime? What needs to be prepped for tomorrow? Is he eating enough? Is he developing normally? Did I respond the right way to that behavior? That mental tab never fully closes. And being constantly on keeps your nervous system slightly activated all day long. When you live in that state long enough, your baseline shifts. You start operating from tension instead of calm, from vigilance instead of softness. And this is where identity erosion can happen quietly, not in a dramatic way, but in small shifts. You laugh less easily, you feel less playful, you feel less patient, you feel less like the version of you that felt expansive. And that's when moms start saying, I don't feel like myself anymore. But here's what I want you to understand. You didn't disappear. Your nervous system is just overloaded. And overload makes everything feel heavier. So the question becomes, how do you protect your nervous system long term? Not just with quick hacks, but sustainability. And the first thing I had to accept was that boundaries are regulation tools. Boundaries are not rejection, they are protection, okay? I'm gonna repeat that. Boundaries are not rejection, they are protection. Saying no to one more commitment, leaving earlier than expected, not answering messages immediately, creating tech-free windows, asking for help, leaving the house alone for an hour. Those are not luxuries. They are nervous system maintenance. And the second thing I had to accept is that you cannot pour from an empty cup is not just a cliche. It's a neurological truth. When you are depleted, your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for patience, reasoning, emotional regulation, functions less effectively. That means you literally have less access to your calm response. So instead of asking, why can't I be more patient? Ask, what state is my nervous system in? Because regulation precedes behavior. And the third shift was understanding that protecting my softness matters. Now, this one really surprised me. When I'm overstimulated for too long, I get sharper, more rigid, less affectionate, less playful. And I really don't like that version of myself. Not because she's bad, but because she's armored. Overstimulation builds armor. However, regulation builds openness. and I want to be open. So protecting my nervous system is not about being calm for optics. It's about staying connected to the version of me that feels warm, that feels like me. There's something else here that feels really important for me to say. A lot of us build our identity on being capable, on being the one who can handle it, on being strong, on not needing much. Motherhood challenges that identity because you will need more rest, more help, more space, more patience with yourself. And if your identity resists that, you'll try to power through instead of adjust. And that was me. Okay, I thought strength meant endurance. Now I understand that strength also means awareness. Awareness of when you're at capacity, awareness of when you need to step back, awareness for when you need to lower the bar. You don't get a trophy for pushing through at the expense of your nervous system, but you do build long-term stability when you honor it. So here's what I want you to try this week. I want you to notice your activation level throughout the day on a scale of 1 to 10. If you're sitting at a 7 by noon, that's data. If you're at a 9 by dinner, that's information. And instead of judging it, adjust something. Lower the lights, turn off the background noise, step outside for a second, hand something off, delay a task. These tiny, tiny shifts repeated daily rewire your baseline. And here's the biggest truth. Overstimulation isn't a motherhood failure. It's a signal that your capacity and your input are misaligned, and you are allowed to realign them. 2 years in, I don't feel like I've mastered this at all. There are still days I snap. There are still days that I feel overwhelmed. And there are still days that I need to lock myself in the bathroom for 5 minutes. But I don't attack myself for it anymore. I regulate, I repair, and I reset. And that difference is everything. Because the goal isn't to never feel overstimulated. The goal is to know what to do when you are, because that is growth. Now, before we wrap this up, there's something even deeper here that I didn't understand in my first year of motherhood. Overstimulation is not just sensory, it's invisible labor. It's the mental tabs that never close. It's remembering when the last nap was. It's knowing which snack he's already eaten. It's anticipating meltdowns before they actually even happen. It's planning transitions, it's calculating timing consistently. And even when no one sees that work, your brain is doing it. And there was a moment recently when I realized just how consistent that mental tracking is. Caleb, my husband, asked me a simple question: "What time is bedtime tonight?" And my brain instantly ran into a full internal calculation. When did he wake up? How long was his nap? How was his mood after his snack? How much stimulation did he have today? How long will bath take? Do we need to wash his hair? Did he eat enough for dinner? And that all happens within seconds. You don't even realize how much you're calculating until you're exhausted from it. Now add in being needed physically. Add in being emotionally responsible for modeling regulation. Add in trying to maintain your identity, your marriage, your work, your body. And of course your nervous system will feel stretched, but here's the part that really changed things for me. When I ignored my overstimulation long enough, I started becoming someone I didn't like. Shorter, more reactive, less affectionate, more transactional. Not because I stopped loving my family, but because chronic activation narrows you. So when your nervous system is in protection mode, you notice you're quicker to snap, slower to laugh, a little more rigid than you used to be. And that's when it really scared me, because I don't want to just survive motherhood. I want to be present in it. I want my son to experience a regulated version of me, not a constantly overwhelmed one. And that realization made me take my nervous system seriously, not as a luxury, as a responsibility. And there was a night where everyone was asleep, the house was quiet, and I finally felt the tension leave my body. And I thought, why does it take complete silence for me to feel like myself again? Why am I waiting until the end of the day to exhale? And that's when I realized I had to stop treating recovery like a reward. Recovery had to become part of my day, not something I earn, not something I get after everything is done, something I build into my regular routine. That meant small shifts, letting the kitchen stay messy sometimes, okay? Letting the laundry wait, not responding to every single message immediately, saying no to something even if I technically could do it. Because just because you can handle something doesn't mean you should. And that was a really hard lesson for me to learn. I built so much of my identity on being capable. But capability without boundaries leads to depletion. And depletion leads to disconnection. And disconnection is what makes moms feel like they've lost themselves. But you don't lose yourself overnight. You slowly drift when you ignore your needs repeatedly. But the good news, you can slowly return by honoring them repeatedly. Overstimulation is not a character flaw. It's feedback. It's your body saying, this is too much without relief. And relief doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be 5 minutes outside. It can be lowering the lights. It can be fewer toys out. It can be slower mornings. It can be asking your partner to handle bedtime by himself once a week. It can be going to bed earlier instead of just scrolling. Tiny realignments, repeated consistently. And 2 years in, here's what I know. The moms who feel steady are not the ones who never get overwhelmed. They're the ones who respect their limits. They're the ones who don't make overstimulation mean that they're failing. They're the ones who repair quickly. They're the ones who regulate instead of spiral. And that's available to you too. Not by becoming calmer overnight, but becoming aware. Because awareness creates choice, and choice creates change. And change over time creates steadiness. What we're after isn't perfection. It's feeling anchored in yourself again. So, if this episode resonated with you, tell me in the comments, what overstimulates you most right now? Is it noise, touch, decision fatigue, lack of alone time? And what's one small regulation shift that you're going to try this week? Remember, we are not becoming calmer moms by shaming ourselves. We are becoming steadier moms by understanding ourselves. So if you're still here, be sure to drop this emoji just so I know that you stayed till the end. And as always, you are stronger than you think.